All right. Well, I know we've got three different topics here.
Oh, okay. I thought we had two, so that sounds like that's one more than I believed. That's good.
mhm. Oh no, because we have the other one from that we were gonna do last week.
Okay, yeah. I saw one. Let me just go in here. I'm on my phone now. I'm just gonna get up this thing here. Podcast section. Want to use it from experience, and yeah, what the difference between tropes and cliches as well. It's that one.
Yeah. So we
What?
have that.
And then yeah, the morality. Oh, okay. Pros and cons of general writing. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. Free.
Anyone in particular you want to start with that like sort of
Mm,
speaks to you?
tropes and cliches. Pros and cons. Nothing speaks too much to me right now. We'll start with the earliest one, the difference between tropes and cliches.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll start.
Um. hmm.
Mm,
When I saw this question, when I thought about it, it was like honestly, I don't think like when I was wrapping my head around it, I didn't think that there was a difference in what they actually mean, but
mm,
more it's like a person's sort of outlook on something that they're currently reading. Like
true. Yeah.
cliches are tropes, but in my head, cliches are tropes that that specific person has seen many times.
Mm. Yeah, it can be a subjective view as well. That I can see
Yeah.
that being a factor.
So
True.
when I was thinking of it, it's like cliches are like things that that individual has. Because when I was young, all that young stuff
Mm.
was cool to me, but that's because I hadn't seen it. And as I got older, you started seeing more of those types of things. You're like, oh, this is cliche. I'm like, and then when I became a better writer, it's like they're not cliche. Like, yeah, I
Mm.
guess they're cliche, but they don't have that negative stigma that I used to attach to them. It's more like
Mm.
it's similar ideas in different stories, which is okay to me. I don't know how
Yeah.
everyone else feels, but it's okay to me. I don't really see much of a difference. I guess
Mm.
trope is even trope sometimes has a negative connotation to it. I have no idea why, but
Yeah, I don't know. I think some people just kind of when they hear oh it's a trope, they kind of I think it's not to say the people. I don't want to like mark it as like oh it's just this group of people. But I think it's probably some of the people who kind of take originality too seriously. That's my
mhm.
guess. So they kind of want to hear oh it's a thing a lot of people have done or seen before, therefore it can't be that good. Kind of that
Yeah.
mentality. I think that's like part of it. Also, I don't know. I think with doing between tropes and cliches, I agree. Like it is definitely to do with like the eyes of the beholder. But
Mhm.
I also think that it's like I think it also depends on like the execution of said thing. Like a trope is just a trope, but then a trope can be like okay, for example, a bit long winded, I guess. But like I think they say Evangelion is a kind of played a good part in how anime is today, and I
Mhm.
can in a lot of ways agree. Um, but like, and there are a lot of good shows that's come since then. Like, there's no doubt about that. But like, there'll be some where you can literally feel where all they kind of have is kind of a straight template of them of like tropes of them characters, and they don't really add anything else to it. It's so like plain in its execution that it's just inferior compared to the thing it was like inspired from, if that makes sense. So even I guess even if you're fresh to it, it will probably feel lacking if you probably even just a bit versed in other stories and kind of take characters or like having character development or something like that. So I think there is a level where you can kind of say yeah this is a cliche and this is a trope, but yeah, your how much you've watched the thing does play a part in how you see it. So you kind of have to check yourself. But I do think that execution is a good part of it.
Mhm.
That makes
I
sense.
understand and I agree. So I'm thinking that would it be a misnomer? Isn't wouldn't it just the way that you presented it? Wouldn't it more be like a cheap imitation. I don't think a cliche is a
Mm.
cheap imitation of something. I think it's just a repetitive idea. But I think if the idea is still done well, I
Yeah.
don't think there's an issue. So
Yeah, I
wouldn't.
think I think a trope is just if it's done if the idea is done fine, then it's just like it's just a trope. But if it's I think a cliche is where it's done so plainly and it has nothing. It really doesn't add nothing more to the story to the point where you can literally cut out that character in that story, put him into another story, and there's still that character. You know what I mean? It doesn't. Do you know what I mean? It's like it's the like I'm trying to use an example as a character. It's just like 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 a horror movie. You have you have the I don't know. You just have you have the idiot worker guy who goes in and gets himself killed because he's got to do his job, although he has like a bunch of nonsense happening. It's like,
Yeah.
well, you can have that character or a character like that, and you could put him into another story. Well, maybe just change his occupation, and he's practically the same thing. Whereas, and that would be like a cliche where that's all you can really say. Like if you're trying to define his character is, oh, he's the idiot character guy, worker guy who gets killed and thing. That's literally it. Like there's really not much else to him, except for maybe the lines he used in this movie and the other movie are different, but he's basically the same guy. Whereas if it was like I guess a trope of that character, it'll be a guy who's a worker guy and he was a bit of an idiot, but I don't know. He has maybe a bit more of an arc. I'm using something really like. To be honest, I think like it's probably not a best example, but he has a bit more of an arc, or the things that happen to him, it feels a bit more part of the world and part of the story that's been told. Like he kind of belongs in that world a bit better. Not so much that he is this embodiment of this character idea, but he's a body of that character idea, sure, but it just happens to work for the story, the world, and the environment he's in. To put me like, okay, yeah, I've seen that before, but this works. That I don't know. I think.
I get what you're getting at, but what about cliched plot ideas, plot points, that sort of
Oh,
cliche?
okay,
Not so much a character, but cliched parts of the story.
like rescue arc and stuff like that. I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean the cliche of that again. It just comes down to the execution. Like, yeah, I think it's just tropes until you kind of see how they've executed it. Like, like again, if someone just took rescue the princess and just took that wholesale, and it was just kind of like a really badly written character. Like the characters are just flat. They barely get that point across. Oh, we've gone and saved this people. Oh, we went here, we hit this monster, and we did a thing. It just. I think where it just feels like they did the things which you've seen in other movies, and they didn't add anything else to it. There's no personal reason or personal character arc why this person went to go after them, or personal beef with this boss. It was just like, this person needs to be saved. I need to hit this enemy. I need to get this person. And I think it's just a cliches ones where it feels like it has the things which are fine as they are as tropes, but then it does them in such a bare bone way where there's just you're not getting nothing new out of it.
Yeah. So like the way that I'm wrapping my head around it is that like there's good and bad cliches where like because to me tropes are still just ideas, and in order for something to be a cliche it has to be an execution of said ideas. It's just the execution of that idea having been seen many times before. And so like I think that there's just good and bad cliche where you can sort of know how something is going to pan out because you've seen stuff like this before. Like you can have the general idea, but it can still be good in its own right. Like if by standing on its own, basically, it's still good. Because a lot of times what people do is they'll compare what that person did to another work that did a similar thing and said, oh, this took from this. This didn't do it as well as that, even though they're different stories. And instead, you'd have to sort of like look at it in its own right. And yeah, it can be a cliche to you because you've seen, like, tournament arcs in anime. That those are cliche. You see them almost all the time, but a lot of them are a lot better than others just with what they do within them,
Yeah.
even if they have the same outcomes as the previous ones that you'd seen before. And then there's poor cliches, and I think that is sort of thinking it's sort of like when you take that trope and those ideas, as you said, sort of at face value and kind of just leave it at there. No real execution, but rather like it's just flat. It's hard to explain, but you said
It
it,
is,
and
yeah.
like
It's
it kind of
like,
just falls flat.
yeah, it's such a fine line. I think the best way, if we were to like show it, is just kind of like a trope is just the idea. It's the idea of the thing we speak about. How that idea is done, good or bad, is not really. I don't want to say really put to question, but like it's speaking of the idea. But then cliche is when the thing is done in a very. It's executed, but just executed very bare bones or very poorly, or in a way where it really doesn't add anything more than things you see in just like plenty of times, or just I think many, but it's just done in a very flat way. So I think because I could argue that even someone who maybe not used to a certain genre will just not feel that engaged by it, except for maybe just experience something. Besides experience something new, they won't get anything more from it. Where they could have easily got more from it if the person just like paid a bit more effort into the execution.
Yeah, that's sort of why I called it like a good and a bad cliche. Because I think in the end, cliche kind of comes back to whether you've seen it many times before or not. I think that checkbox has to be ticked before you can call anything a cliche. And
Yeah,
then after that, then it, yeah, as you said, it goes into the execution of whether it was like, as you said, even if a person hasn't seen these things before, they can still get a feel for whether it was done in an engaging way or it's just really bare bones. But that person won't call it a cliche because they haven't seen it before. They just are going to say like, this was bad.
yeah, yeah. They just feel like I don't know. At least for me, because there'll be some shows where I watch and I'm just like although I haven't really like maybe seen that genre too hard, I just feel like yeah, there's probably more they could have done here. Except for
Mm-hmm.
everything's been kind of a bit fresh to me. This how they doing this is a bit fresh. How they doing that a bit fresh, but it just felt like that point was all it was for. If that
Yeah.
makes sense. I think sometimes it's yeah, I don't say all the time, but like I do recall sometimes where I'm like, yeah, more after when I see another one kind of going down the same path, I'm like, okay, yeah, okay, I'm fine, I'm good. uh, but yeah, it is. I don't know, like because I think a lot of some people kind of even take like their take on it. It really depends, not in the moment, but like yeah, well, it depends in the moment, or if they're not really thinking about um like not the grander scheme of things, but yeah, I think yeah, them words do get mixed up
Mm-hmm.
quite easily. And to be fair, it's like I think the line between them is a bit muddy.
Yeah.
But
And I think the connotation needs to be changed a little bit. See, I sometimes see too many writers worry about, like, there are times people will come to me and they'll share me some ideas and they'll be like, is this cliche?
mm,
I mean, I don't know. Is it? I don't think it matters, but
yeah,
I think what matters is if you just execute it well.
mm,
But too many people worry about that kind of stuff, and I think that stuff isn't for you to worry about. I think
yeah,
you just gotta do it,
yeah.
and hopefully, what you're trying to do is
Comes through.
um, understood by the readers or the audience or whoever,
Yeah,
and it's pretty much
yeah, true. I think especially when you're doing your first draft. I say this in general. I think a lot of people. I speak for myself as well. To be fair, which I don't know. To be fair, I'm editing and going for like a rewrite, so I guess it's fair to be a bit more critical in general. But like
mhm.
in your first draft, you really shouldn't. I think besides writing down, getting anything out of your head, you really shouldn't be worried about like how cliche a thing is. It's just
No.
is the message getting across? Um, and yeah, it's the ideas in your head on the paper, and then from there you can say, oh yeah, maybe this could be a bit better. Because I'm just thinking back on when I started doing writing, and like the first, I had the first version of this the story I'm doing in book one. There's some moments I look back at and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's some really like it's some of the stuff I look at in some anime and I'm like, oh, that is some like that not weak rhyme, but it's just like, oh, that's really typical. Of
Mm-hmm.
course, this person got upset and said some things, blurted some things, and ran away. But I'm thinking after when not until the second time I wrote, I think, no, why would they like why did I do that? And I was like, oh yes, because it felt right at the time. It felt like, oh yeah, this person's upset and they'll be upset and I'll run away, blah blah blah. So I started looking to more like maybe they'll deal with it a bit more, with a bit more nuance or something. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
but I would never have gotten there if I never actually had the thing there in the first place. So I think some people, especially in the first write, just don't worry about that too much, man. Like yeah, they'll just hold you back, and you'll just be there for ages working on stuff which you haven't even like officially gotten out your head yet. It's a bit of a pain, but yeah. Mm, cool.
Yeah, that's definitely me. Just throwing everything to the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah, yeah. Which one's it?
Right. I guess we can move on to just go down the list. This
Yeah,
one's pretty heavy-handed, though. The morality of using someone's experiences for your own work.
yeah. Like when I heard that, the first thing that kind of in my head is kind of like, okay, say someone a writer you look up to, and you're like, oh, his stuff is the bomb. I want to make stuff like that too. But
Say that
and
again? It
like
kind of cut out, so I didn't hear
so
it.
I think that the first thing that came to my mind when I read that was kind of like something like, oh, someone's like a big fan of a certain artist or a certain writer and how they do their thing. So they kind of like they start researching them, start researching how they do their stuff, start researching, you know, their daily routines down to probably even like I don't know, just taking it like I won't say taking it to extreme, but like they learn all the stuff. That's cool, but then they're literally just like they just applied that without even like even if it doesn't feel right for them because they just think, oh, this is in the head. It's kind of like this is the way, if that makes sense. To the point where
Oh,
it could be a
let,
detriment if that makes sense.
let me elaborate specifically on what this person said. I won't mention them,
Mm.
but let me quickly find it. So basically, they were saying sort of they said it's basically a story. I'm gonna sort of paraphrase it. It
Mm.
is the author sort of, I guess, wrote about uh, someone who passed away,
Okay.
and the experiences that that person had, and they used their experiences um, as a counselor
Mm.
with teens and
Mm.
dealing with cancer and their struggles,
Mm.
and he used that sort of information for the plot of his story
Okay.
and made a lot of money off of it, but did not um, did not ever write any uh, like blurbs or dedications on the people that he got his experiences from.
Okay. Hmm. So what did that get him in trouble or something?
No.
Okay. Don't know because like I don't see besides like how is it? Yeah, I won't say it's a slippery slope, but it's like I think because we're inspired by like anything we write, anything we see or talk about is inspired by something.
Yeah,
So
that's sort
it's
of what
just
I was thinking.
so I don't know. Like I don't know. I'm not gonna. Did someone bring this up like it's a problem or?
I couldn't tell. They just
Mm.
brought it up. It was a suggestion for something for us to
Okay.
talk about. So, like,
Mm.
I was thinking about it as I was cleaning my bathroom, and I was like, I've sort of had a view on monopolizing ideas
Mm.
before, but I never really had it in terms of like writing. So I was like, I already have my stance on this in some spheres, but let's check in this sphere. And like I was going through my head, and I was like, it does make sense that if you draw, I mean, when I first thought of it, I was like, yeah, if you draw on someone's experiences and you write about them, especially if you're making profit off of it, I think you should sort of give them credit. But at the same time, like, where does that line sort of stop? Because as you said, almost everything we write about is about experiences, whether it's our experiences, someone else's experience. Because if you're writing solely from your experiences, chances are your work is going to be very straightforward.
Yeah.
I don't know if I use the right word, but I'm just going to say straightforward for now, just because you only have one view of the world.
Yeah, you only have your point of view of the world at best, and that's like,
Yeah.
yeah.
And so to write about the things other people are going through, you're going to have seen them somewhere, or you're going to have spoken to them. You're going to have had some sort of experience understanding other people's lives to be able to write about other people's lives. That's just how it works.
Yeah.
And so it's like, where do you sort of draw the line at when you have to give credit to someone for the story that you write, even if the idea you get from them? I think that you still have to put in, if you write an autobiography, of course you have to give them credit, or even a biography, but not an autobiography, just a biography. But
yeah,
I think if you're doing, fiction, I think
it's a different beast,
like,
isn't it?
yeah, like I don't know. I'm having trouble figuring out where you draw the line, if at all, because you're getting your experiences from everywhere. Even when they say you do research, right?
Yeah.
When they're like, let's say you're writing about somebody who is struggling with certain problems like ADHD, they're like, do research, go speak to people. Most people who do that don't credit those people for the information you got.
I don't know. I think for me, I think it comes down to the writer's morality in that regard and what they feel would do just desserts to it. Because to be honest, I feel just the fact of having exposure on the page about this experience is payment enough to certain things. Because, like, especially if it's about autobiography, that's a different story. Because now you're directly speaking about someone's life. This is someone's life direct thing. But these in fiction, it's an idea of the person's life, and I mean the story world can be hella realistic. But if it's fiction and your name's not being mentioned in there, the place you're in, if it's fiction and it's not a one for one talking about your life or bringing up your life in some sort of way where it's personally everyone can draw that to you directly, then it's an experience. Because yeah, sure, the people who have ADHD, you've talked to them and you're spoken about, you're inspired by a certain guy's experience who has ADHD, but they're not the only person in the world of that. Even the minorities, there are other people in the world who have that. So, and in fiction, you're writing that with your own connotations of a character and your own, whatever, because there's no 100%, how someone makes up a character. Sometimes people get more inspiration from people they know and then mix up with their ideas. Some people do the opposite way around, just a made up character with a hint of some people. There's no real thing, and you can have all sorts, mixes of real life to inspiration in one story in different spectrums. So you can't really put a price tag on how much you owe them on that. But besides, I honestly feel from beginning it's the sheer fact that that experience is now being put into a fiction page is in its way a payment, if there is even payment being put to question. Because again, yeah, it's just it's fiction and it's your ideas. Because then if you were to take that that this person owed this person because he told him his experience and use that as inspiration, then where do you where would you draw the line? I think it's just a slippery slope, and it'll just go down to cause a problem. Because then what next? Oh, you need to learn a bit of a language, so you go to talk people language. Oh, now you owe everyone who speaks that language. Like, what now? Now you owe your French teacher for teaching you French to help do a book and a bit of French. Like, where would it stop? So I don't know. I wouldn't say they owe him anything. I think to them, I think it comes down to the morality of the writer, and I feel like a writer who, especially, was like they were experienced in that thing. Because I don't know, from what I understand, I don't know much about the article you told me, but it doesn't sound like the guy made it a secret. It's not like he's trying to like, don't speak about these people who I work with. Like, it kind of just sounded like he made a story, he had an experience, he, and it was inspired by the people he was around, and he made a story and he put it out there, and the idea is out there, and that probably did him just fine. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I don't think there's really any Owen needed.
Yeah,
so to speak.
Like in this, I'm gonna preface this. In this specific case, I don't know the character, so I don't know all the ins and outs of the publishing and how the work was done. But in the context of this specific question, using someone's experiences for your own work, I agree that I don't think that any sort of payments or reparations need to be made. There's just nowhere to draw the line. At some point, you'll just owe everybody for everything you put in the story, unless you write from your point of view only, except that's going to be a very
technically
one-sided, uneducated point of view.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, I'm going into extreme cases here, but like, even then, like, I would say just like, because you don't owe, like, I don't know. Okay, this is really sounds stupid and extreme, but like, everything you lay your eyes on, technically you don't own that. So what? Now you write down white walls and things. Like, oh, that builder wrote the right rules and things. Do I owe him? You know what I mean? Because everyone. I think everyone agree that's a bit absurd. You're not gonna have to owe someone just because you laid eyes on a fan and now you've written down about a fan. You have to owe the company about a fan. Like, you're not gonna do that. But it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it. Yeah, I don't think that's. Yeah, I don't think, like. I think Twitter and everything does some crazy things, but hopefully this does, like, stuff like that doesn't become a problem. Which I don't sound. In this case, it doesn't sound like it is, but yeah, it just yeah, I don't think so. I don't think that's.
So as you said, it comes down to the morality of the writer, and it's like, if they want to dedicate this work to someone, then they're all for it. But I would not
make it like a necessary thing to do.
I wouldn't make it a necessary thing. I wouldn't fault someone for not doing it or not wanting to do it.
Yeah,
because writing is still a lot of work.
Yeah, and it takes a lot of it takes a lot of effort to do that. To write itself, it takes so much places you're getting your inspiration from, and big and small. You know what I mean? It's thing. Like, and also there are writers who do dedicate their things to like them certain causes, or just dedicate it to their wives or their friends or their families. And sometimes they'll probably dedicate people, and they'll look at it and say, "Wait, me? What do you mean? I just spoke to you one time about this thing, and it was nothing to relate to the story." And they've probably been in there dedicated. So you know what I mean? It's thing. It's crazy. Yeah.
Okay, so I feel like we've gone through that one pretty much. I like that one though. I was thinking on it for a while.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
I was thinking, and I was like, yeah, you probably should. And then I was like, okay, but where?
Yeah. Nah.
Alright, so the last one would be the pros and cons of general writing templates. So this person, they came to me and they sort of talked to me about how in a lot of creative writing courses in college, they give writing templates to students, and some authors did use these templates and graduated from different colleges, but
Mm.
they got big success from those templates.
Okay, yeah.
Now, I'm probably going to go out on a limb and say this right now. They did not follow that template to a T.
Doubt it.
I highly doubt it that they
Doubt it.
followed the template to a T.
Yeah. Just by simple fact, I mean, it depends how much you want to split hairs on it, but just by the simple fact that everyone has their own like idea of writing or stuff, you know, they're not gonna, because I know there are some of these ones. I think for scripts get, because they're a bit more, they have to be a bit more lean. The
Mm-hmm.
templates on them are a bit more like, oh, on the 50th page this kind of happens, some of them, and that's fine. Honestly, a lot of them things they use they work because some people have done a research and found out there's a pattern between a lot of movies that worked, and these people probably didn't deliberately, not every single one of them at least, didn't deliberately say, oh, we're gonna make a beat on page 50. It felt right to do it there, and a lot of stories do that. So it comes down to like, oh,
Yeah.
we found a pattern that works. That's great, but like I don't think I'm not sure what I was gonna say, but yeah, like a lot of people. But yeah, they don't. It doesn't fall to a point of, oh, everyone, like the person literally stopped at page 50. It's just that around this general area, that he so happened to have dealt with a certain part of the arc, and I move with the other part of the arc. And kind of using scripts. There's like script writing ones because they are more lean and more known to have where it is a bit more likely where, you know, your beats are going to fall into certain places just to kind of get this amount of information done in this amount of time frame you have. And
Mm-hmm.
it's, you know, much more lean beast compared to like a typical book. But even then there's leeway, and there's ways where it's probably just been bent or broken even in some places. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, like these things
But
work. It's like I think a good template is like, it's like a good engine, but each engine is different, and it depends on what you're trying to do with your story, where you're trying to go with your story, whether that engine is relevant for your story at all, you know, or if it's even gonna, you know, like, do you have the right fuel to even run this engine the way you want
yeah,
as a person, you know? Uh, so it just, yeah, it mainly just depends
I think there
on
are
you.
some pros though.
Yeah, oh yeah, definitely. It's good. I think it's really good to know about them. Like, I think
Yeah,
the more you
like
know, the merrier, because then you
yeah,
got more tools.
and they're guides.
Mm.
I think they should be taken very loosely,
Yeah.
but they're definitely guides to help you draw ideas out into a format that we've seen work, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean you have to follow it.
Mm-mm.
But
Yeah.
we at least know that these formats have had success before, and
Mm.
it gives you a way to sort of pull ideas out with your imagination.
Mm.
Now, the con with that I've seen with a lot of newer writers is that they take these writing templates and they follow them to a T, and they
Yeah.
struggle with imagination and instead sort of focus on quote unquote hard rules. This
Yeah.
is here, this has to work like this.
Yeah.
And they sort of trap themselves and their creative freedom,
Yeah.
which is probably the worst thing you can do
Especially
to
in the
a
beginning.
writer or
Yeah.
as a writer.
Yeah. Especially in the beginning, because at beginning is where beginnings can be tough, especially when you're starting off
Yes.
and you're not new. You're new to this. You have no muscle memory of keep doing going for the grind. You haven't really learned, like, probably besides watching movies and stuff. You haven't really got like a full like good grasp of like what makes a story good, except
And you don't
maybe
trust
a gut
yourself.
feeling. Exactly, yeah. So yeah, getting trapped in the template and just kind of like, oh, follow this template only, and use it and thinking that's gonna be just the only way you can write can hold you back easily. Um, I think, but yeah, I was gonna say another good thing about templates though. It also helps you analyze other mediums or stories a bit more efficiently and quicker,
Mm-hmm.
or kind of get to the gist of why this thing works quicker, which I think is really awesome too.
Yeah, I didn't even think
But
of it from that angle as the
mm,
observer writer.
yeah, and it literally just kind of helps you kind of like break down. Oh, okay, this is why this thing worked really well, and this movie. Like sometimes I'll go through like, because I went through like, I think there's one called Saving the Cat. Some where it just talks about this. I've got. I think it's like, is it 15 beats? But anyways, yeah, like it's called Saving the Cat. This one, the certain template, and yeah, and it just I think back on other shows and stuff I watch, I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of see what you mean. It helps. I think if there was any advice, not really say advice is the best, but like if there's any advice, I'd say it's like don't just like if you're doing research in templates, try and look at a bunch of them.
Mm-hmm.
So that way you're not just like you're not just seeing it from one angle. If you're gonna use them, you at least have a few of them to use, so you're not really boxed in.
Yeah,
But
and I would also probably give advice and say stay away from templates until you've written at least some.
yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I would honestly just say, I mean, it depends. Everyone works differently, so I don't want to like say, oh, best way to do it this way because that just might have just worked for me. But yeah, I would say like if you enjoyed like if you have an idea or you have a story you want to do and you really like and like that's inspired you to go and like that's inspired you to actually want to pick up a thing, I say just fiddle with that for as long as that amusement holds you first. Do the best you can with what you have right there, then look about and kind of see what everyone else is saying when you feel a bit more comfortable doing that. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I won't say it's the way, but like I find the things I've done and I've stuck with for a long time, it's happened like that. I like stuff like even when I did animation, stick animation first time, I just went crazy doing stuff myself. I didn't know there was anything else out there. Then I kind of saw everything else out there. I kind of understood where I was in that, and then kind of started to try and take on, apply stuff I liked seeing. Same with writing. So yeah, I think that's one good way of doing it. Just don't limit yourself. I think just don't limit yourself.
That's yeah.
Yeah.
That's really it. I'm really glad I didn't use writing templates. I sort of use templates now, but again, I'll look at like 6 different templates and be like, okay, I kind of need some of this piece, and I need some of that piece, and this will probably help me here. And I'll
Yeah.
take something and I'll be like, oh, I actually don't need this anymore. But I think you have to develop a level of judgment and confidence in yourself to even do that.
Yeah. Yeah. You need a bit more. You need to have. Is that the right word?
Autonomy.
Autonomy. Yeah. You need to have a bit of that to like really kind of like so you're not just kind of beholden to the tool. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're not saying, oh, screwdriver spins sideways. Put here. It's kind of like, oh, I can use the screwdriver to do this, or I can use the screwdriver to do this and this and this, or how about I use this, then use the screwdriver. You know what I mean? So that way you're kind of like that's the best place you kind of want to be when you're when you're approaching when you're approaching the templates. You're kind of being from a point of view where you kind of like you can break those down and then find out what parts you need to use in that moment, rather than just follow all this from A to Z like I guess like a cooking instruction or something. But yeah, but besides that, so just grind, isn't it? Just grind. Yeah.
I'm wondering if I have another question. I had a question that came up and kind of just popped into my head, thinking about like templates, and it was sort of like how to ask questions. Like if you're a writer trying to seek advice, how to ask questions,
That is.
or things to think of when you ask questions. And I'm wondering if we have enough time to talk about something like that because I feel like that's a very extensive topic.
Yeah. I've time now. If you got like anything in mind, I just think that is in itself a good question. It's like, because yeah, I think that's one of the biggest things I noticed in the beginning. It's like, it's the kind of questions people ask, kind of determines how quick they're actually gonna grasp it. But then also you have to understand a certain amount of things to even think about asking the right questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So in my head, I don't know. Thinking on it now, it kind of feels like the chicken or the egg sort of thing.
Yeah. It's like you'll reach a point where you start asking the right kinds of questions, and it's like one day you'll stop asking, because usually, as you said in the podcast, that sadly is going to be left in the void forever. But you said that a lot of writers you can sort of tell by like the questions that they ask for permission.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I've noticed that that a lot of people ask for permission
Yeah. It's like
versus,
it's like is this allowed? I did this thing. Is this okay? It's like
yeah,
that's yeah. I mean,
versus asking if it's working. And I
yeah,
think that's sort of the difference in fundamental, like the fundamental type of question
yeah,
is this okay to do versus is what I'm doing working?
yeah.
And
No,
I
yeah, I
think
agree.
if you're asking the latter,
Mm,
that's sort of the stage you want to be at when you're trying to seek advice.
yeah,
And when you're at the first stage,
you're kind of at the
you're
mercy of
going
anyone you kind of
run
talking to.
across.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, that can be a lot of trouble for you. Even at best, even if you come across like a really solid amount of people who just like who can like answer things in a way where you're not left at the mercy of their own like biases.
Hmm.
It's still just a long process because then you might just keep doing that. I don't know. I think it also comes down to like the mentality of the person. I'm trying to think of like when I started. I'm just going trying to draw from my experience to kind of like maybe make a parallel, but like I don't know. Yeah, when I started, I think I just kind of went crazy for a minute.
Yeah.
I just wrote. I told myself I don't know this. I think said this a couple times, but I don't know this process. I don't know how to spell half these flipping words. I know this, but I don't give a crap. I'm just gonna do it because I have an idea and I want to get out there. I'm just gonna go crazy. I want it out of my head on the paper. Then after a while, I was kind of asking myself certain questions, all kind of thinking about like the wider scope of like, is is this is this the right way of doing things? So I just kind of snuck her. I went into like one forum. I can't remember what it was. It was a really like writing forum place, and I just kind of scoured around looking at people asking a bunch of these questions, and I was asking like it just you go to the question sections, and they'll ask even to this day they ask questions. A lot of the questions were kind of touching the back of my mind, like is this thing okay? Is this right? Is that right? And after a while, after like going through like maybe 10 or 20 of them, I just saw a pattern of it's all basically the same question in a way. A lot of them questions are kind of just like I said, kind of just it's kind of asking permission to do this thing or asking permission to do that thing. And that's when I kind of realized like, okay, because all of them kind of what I found in all the forums where the questions asked, it always kind of ended with just right. Like in one way or another, not just maybe not literally like that, but it'll just come down to oh okay, you're trying to do this and this and this, but you just got you just got to keep at it, you just got to keep reading, you just got to keep writing. And
Hmm.
I just kept that's in one way or another in every single question, no matter what the question is, it basically boils down to that every single time. And then in my head I just realized, just right. Well, that's what I started with, and then I think I said like I think what one really kind of like really stuck with me was when I saw someone who was doing the opposite. Like apparently he was hella smart. He did hella research. He was going through bare books, writing books, but he hasn't written a word. And he just from what the person was saying, it sounds like he was just kind of sitting around waiting for other people to fail like him, so he can just like sit there and lick his wounds with them. And
Yeah.
I was thinking, this guy sounded like he did research out of sound like this guy put in the work to do the research to be proper educated in his thing, and he didn't write a word. So in my head, I'm in the mind. So I'm just gonna keep. The thing I did was the best, wisest move I did, but I had no idea I did the wisest move. So I'm just gonna keep
Yeah.
doing it. And I think that's where, for me, I didn't. After that, I just forgot about the forum because every time I look at the questions, I had nothing to ask. I think it's the reason why I find it so hard to come up with questions, because in my head it's just like, unless a question in front of me, my head doesn't think about one to tackle unless I'm generally like stuck in something. But when I'm generally stuck in something, I kind of know most of it boils down to just right or something I've known or something I checked. So yeah,
Yeah. A lot of my questions come from like something that I'm seeing.
mm,
Like people will speak to me, and I'm like, I'm noticing this over and
yeah,
over again, or it'll be like stuff that maybe I struggled with in the past because I
mm.
sort of did take the just right approach, but at the same time, I was listening to criticism because I'm always open to criticism, but
Yeah.
I listened to criticism the wrong way originally because I was listening to people criticize without knowing my intentions first.
Yeah.
And that slowed me down for a bit. But once I learned that, oh, my intentions are more important than what you criticize first. Once you understand what I'm trying to do
Yeah.
and then you criticize it, okay, we can
Yeah,
talk.
we can
But
talk. Yeah, exactly.
if you're criticizing something because you disagree with it, even though it's your disagreement is with the story itself and not what I tried to do with the story, then we'd have nothing to say
Yeah.
because now you're telling me to write a different story.
Yeah, yeah. You're not on the same page of what you're trying to what you're trying to achieve, and therefore, yeah, it's just not really useful to you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and then just the people you come across who you get answers to, yeah, you kind of fall in the mercy of them. So you have to. It kind of comes down to you to be like aware of what they're trying to really say. Like they say
Yeah.
things on the page. They say this, and this is wrong. That's wrong, or this is wrong, or this could be like that. But you have to think, why are they telling me this? What's their point of view? What have they watched? What haven't they watched? What have they this? What have they that? And then you have to kind of deduct. And then, I mean, this is me. This is me at best. If you do come across something like that, me at best is kind of thinking, what could I salvage from this, if anything, that
Yeah.
would be applicable to what I'm trying to do. But yeah, it's could be tough sometimes. But yeah, it's interesting, like the whole journey. But yeah, I think that's the reason why I've just like thought, yeah, well, I just know that writing without worrying, or writing and just go for it and not worrying until later was the wisest decision, even though I didn't know it. So
Mm-hmm.
that's which is really good.
So yeah, go back to the question about how to ask questions.
Mm,
Yeah, it really did come down to like the types of questions you shouldn't ask are sort of like, at least from what I see, if your questions kind of go along the lines or the philosophy of, is this okay? Is
mm,
this right? Am I doing the right thing? I think you should not ask those kinds of questions again because you are putting your creative freedom at risk of whoever you come across.
yeah, yeah,
And instead, you should just uh, take your approach, just write,
mm,
evaluate what you've done, and if you don't see anything wrong with what you're doing, or if you see something wrong with it,
mm,
but you can't exactly figure out what, then you bring that to someone and say, have I done this
mm,
in a way where it's coming across clearly?
yeah,
Is there a better way to do what I just did?
yeah.
Not sort of,
Is this okay?
is this okay to do? Because it's okay to do whatever the heck you want,
Yeah,
but you have to know that if what you want doesn't line up with what I want to read, then
yeah,
I'm not gonna like it.
mm, mm,
No matter how good it is, I can acknowledge that it's good, but it's not okay for me because if I was writing the story, I would do something else. That's what I want to read. That's what I want to write.
yeah, yeah,
That's why I'm doing my own story.
yeah, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I know. Oh, I think I was gonna say something that's gonna link to that, but like, I feel like the yeah, but I think to know, I feel, yeah, that a part of it is also like knowing yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's like a good, like a start of like where you kind of shift from, is this okay, to is what I'm doing working, like, is, can you see the thing I'm doing, like, is this, can you know what I mean? uh yeah, a good part of it is kind of just like starting with knowing yourself, sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
uh but to get to that, I think you just kind of have to, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I realized going to a loop now. Yeah, but to kind of do that, you kind of have to go out there and figure yourself out. So yeah, just write, just write, just write. understand what you're, yourself, what you're trying to do, and then ask from there. Like, is the thing I did trying to do? Can you see what I'm trying to do? Like,
Yeah. And
is it
I
translating?
think I understand why
Mm.
people, because I think it's a couple of things. I think it's people associate a lot of negative connotation to this word, but ego, a
Mm.
lot of wanting to preserve your ego. No one wants to think they're bad. No one
Yeah.
wants to be bad at something.
Mm. Mm.
And you don't want to write something and people think it's bad or you think it's bad because
Mm.
as humans we want to preserve our self-image to ourselves, like,
Yeah.
or not ourselves, that was redundant, but we want to preserve our self-image. You
Mm.
don't want to look at yourself in a negative light.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't feel like you're wasting your time doing something that's not worth doing, kind of
Yeah,
thing.
and the
So
fear is that when you throw everything at the wall, you're going to see a lot of things that suck.
yeah. Yeah. Nah,
But
that's a big
that's,
tree. That's a big part of it, actually. Yeah.
yeah, that's the nature of it though. You have to look at what parts of you suck
Yeah.
to get better at them. You can't try and you can't refine everything from nothing.
Mm. Yeah.
You
100%.
have to have a basis first and be like, okay, this, like you're building a house, you're like, okay, this left quadrant is not sturdy. You have to fix this. Okay, the cement on this side needs to be paved over once again. You have to do it like that. You can't
Mm.
build the perfect house on the first try
Yeah.
because, or you can't refine the house when there's no house.
Yeah, yeah, and you can't become a master of art book first becoming a noob or apprentice. You know what I mean? So
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, you guys just gotta take the journey. Like, there's really no round one. I think you gotta take the journey, and I think, yeah, especially at the beginning, when there is the least amount of pressure on you, or the least amount of experience you have. Because I think there's, the saying where the more ignorant you are, the more loud you can be.
yeah,
And I think that's, looking into like the wisdom of why it's good to just go for it at the beginning, you know, with abandon is, yeah, you are the most ignorant, but then you're also the most confident or loudest, you could say. Like,
hmm,
gaining wisdom in a thing doesn't necessarily, like, the more you know, the more you realize you don't know, which can be which is more humbling, but then also makes you more cautious.
yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think, yeah, that's one reason why it's just good to just go for it at the beginning.
That's crazy because when you
Yeah.
say that, I see how that connects.
Mm.
Because the more you know, you become more cautious, but you're
Mm.
becoming cautious without having that confidence in yourself to make the right decisions.
Yeah, like
Be-
it's a trade off. Yeah, it could be a trade off, definitely. Like, sure, your brothers.
yeah,
Yeah. Oh, yeah, do you wanna
I was
say?
gonna say because like if you go through that process that you went through and developed confidence in yourself, even if you become more cautious in your
Mm.
decision making, you're still
Yeah.
confident in your decision making. But a
Yeah.
lot of times people start out early on, they don't have that confidence and they're building up caution. So then they sort of just sit there doing nothing.
Mm. 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 Yeah.
And then they start asking for permission because they can't make their own decisions anymore.
Yeah. And also, actually, that's no, that's kind of pretty. No, yeah, that's me as well. I'm trying to say, because I think each person's different, and each person how they approach a learning process, it can be different as well. So it doesn't mean it's just synonymous to everyone, but it is
Yeah.
possible as well that if you start learning a thing, in this case, writing, because writing, like, it's not necessarily like learning like plumbing, for example. Like, once you know the things to do the thing, it's not really, there's not like 20 different ways you can
Yeah.
you can unblock a toilet, and no one's gonna criticize you for cleaning the toilet and making it work, and oh, sorry, that's anyway, you know what I mean. But also, I think, like, when you just start off learning a skill like writing straight off the gate without really having a chance to go wild with it and not knowing the rules, you kind of put yourself, you're more likely to be put into a position where you are beholden to a superior, or feel like you need to ask someone for permission, because you're kind of being straight, you kind of started off in a student teacher role in writing. Like, I'm not trying to say it's guaranteed it's going to happen like that, like you're going to always be beholden, but I feel like it becomes a bit more quicker go-to of, you know, checking your stuff. And I think again, I guess also depends on the teacher and how they teach the thing, because you can teach them to be a bit more, you know, to say, hey, think for yourself, you know, hey, first week go wild with writing, don't ask me 50 questions, I'll tell you these things but just go wild. Like, you can do that, and it depends on like the person as well. But I do think that is I think it can increase your more likelihood of relying on other people for validation for your work. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes perfect sense. That's interesting because now I
Mm.
sort of have a better understanding of like the process that I went through, and a lot of people are going through,
Mm.
went through, or will be going through. So now when people come to me, I kind of have a better idea of what to say to help them.
Yeah, no, yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, it's just like it's don't like the back. What's the back of it? But yeah, I didn't really think of it from that angle too hard until just now. I was like, yeah, that's like because I always knew like the teach. Obviously, I know like teaching, trying to learn writing. It's not the same as learning like a typical curriculum. You know what I mean? Just because of how free, you know, how free flow and like the idea, you know, how the process works. It comes down to, you know, anything can pretty much work in there. It's just execution. Uh, so, but yeah, no, that actually does make me realize, like, does open up realize some things. Obviously, it's not one for one. Like, it's not like,
Mm-mm.
oh, if you looked in the school first thing, you'll just think like, nah, not necessarily. But I think it
No.
does make it more likely, and I do feel like I think for at least for the people who don't see writing for what it really is from the beginning, like if they just kind of treated it like another lesson in school, then yeah, you're kind of it's more possible you're gonna kind of see it as you're kind of gonna treat, you know, the learning process or how you approach your writing like it's another lesson, which it really it kind of isn't. Uh, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say.
Yeah, yeah. So I hope I've got nothing else. Nothing so. But yeah, cool. Yeah, I think I'll save this then. But yeah, that was really good actually.
Yeah. Um, Definitely will try to do this again.